Welcome everyone to Discourse. Today we're going to review The Green Apple Tree by Jean Fackler. It's the summer of 1963 and three teenage boys are busy destroying their innocence, provoking the local law, and sitting in silence as grizzled elders dispense the local lore. Just the usual stuff if you're a kid growing up in the Texas Hill Country. But for one of them, that summer would never end. We start off in 1986 in a bar where Thomas, our main character, he is back in his hometown where he spent some of his childhood. But he's at this bar and he's waiting for one of his childhood friends, Pete, to show up. So as he's waiting for his friend to show up, he starts to kind of reminisce about his childhood friends and the town. So he takes us actually back to like the spring or the summer of 1963, and that's when pretty much this story kind of takes off. So he's reminiscing about him and his friends, right? So at this time, they're teenagers. They're what, juniors in high school?
They're going to
be juniors in high school. Young teenage boys. So this is, like we said, you know, messing with the local law enforcement. They're lying to their parents, each other's parents. They're going through sexual awakenings.
Wet dreams, noticing women. Or being told by adults, oh, you must have a girlfriend. Like, I don't know, should I? Guess I have to start looking into that. It gets more advanced as they get older.
Yeah, extremely typical teenage behavior, I would assume, for boys. He's at the lake with his friend Bennett, and they're skipping rocks. So I kind of just want to talk a little bit about, like, some of the bonding moments that he has with his friend. But I feel like this moment in particular, because the author does such a great job being so descriptive, I feel as though I'm there in that moment, in that memory with Thomas, with Bennett, skipping the stones. I feel like it's a special moment between them because they're not only exerting their young male strength against one another, which is a typical boy thing to do, I suppose, but they're also having like this peaceful moment too. And I feel like the quote is also just like a metaphor for their lives, like as teenage boys growing up. Like, maybe the stone represents them, you know, going through life, the life being the pond, the water, skipping over it, going through trials and finding themselves and trying to gain speed, trying to make it all the way across the pond to the other side, to the land.
But what's on the other side? Who knows? They just know they got to get somewhere.
The throw had felt like a good one, and the stone rode level and true atop the dense air rising off the water. It maintained stability as it slowed and descended, hit the river with a slap 100 yards from the opposite bank, then kicked into the air again, still flying flat and straight. It sailed another 80 feet or so, then rebounded repeatedly, halving the distance each time until its momentum collapsed. When it finally sputtered to a stop and sank into the murky water, it was only 3 yards from the edge of the matted duckweed, hugging the shoreline across the river.
You know, throwing them at first, challenging each other, typical boys. But then they started to just, you know, relax and enjoy the time together, talking about making it across, talking about the legend of the first stone thrown. It was just like a peaceful moment where they, you know, in the background, they knew they had to get somewhere, accomplish something. There was no rush. They were just in the moment.
Right.
And prior to this, kind of funny because Thomas actually created some homemade bombs and threw them to a neighbor's yard and ran off.
I'm like wait, I read this, I was like, wait, hold on. He's making grenades in his garage? What is happening?
With all these parts from his dad's tool shed or whatever.
But I'm like, is this what boys did in like the 60s? Like they just created bombs and stuff?
I think throughout time. Because I remember, I don't know how old I was, probably around the same age, sophomore, junior year in high school. Me and my cousin used to cut open fireworks, make our homemade with 2 liter, empty soda bottles. And yeah, there's some good memories.
Yeah, a mother's nightmare. That's what that is.
Yeah, but they're good moments. We laugh about it now.
Yeah. No one died. It's great.
Yeah.
We all have our fingers, our toes, our eyeballs. It's great.
There was a lot of noise, but nothing was destroyed.
Right.
Which was the goal of Thomas. So he runs off and he barges into his friend's house, like banging on the door, right? He basically breaks in.
To his friend's house, yeah.
Yeah, and his friend was just like, dude, how'd you even know we were even home?
Right.
And then after they briefly explained himself, he's like, all right, well, come on in.
I know.
Just hang out like nothing happened.
I know. Bennett is definitely his ride or die friend. He's like, hey, I got your back. You got my back. It's all good.
Yeah, so
you're blowing up people's houses. Let's come on in. Don't worry about it.
You should have invited me at least.
I know.
Yeah, and then they go into the stone throwing like nothing happened. Just a typical day.
Yeah.
So tell me about Bennett. Like, what you get out of him?
Honestly, I felt like Bennett is just that boy in high school that you just hate because he's so annoying and just like obviously he's super loyal to his friend, but God, so annoying and doesn't care if he like what he says and does. He just does what he does, and he's how he is with his sister. I'm just like, oh, so ridiculous. He definitely made me laugh though, quite a lot.
Yeah, he seemed like the guy that
always messed around. No, he wasn't like malicious about anything.
He wasn't malicious. He just didn't care.
Right.
He was bored all the time, it seems, so he just wanted to be out there doing things. Talk back to his mom, talk back to his sister. So that was interesting, getting to know Bennett and, the mischief and adventures they went on just to exert their energy, I guess.
All that testosterone.
Yeah.
I found it interesting also. I think after Thomas had like a sexual dream about a girl, and
what
then
you call that?
A sexual awakening. I don't know. It's just a wet dream basically. But I found it interesting that he's looking at himself in the mirror. He's examining himself, and as a girl growing up, as a woman even now, I feel like women are so hard on themselves with how they look. I just didn't realize that boys go through the same thing or a similar thing. He was, he was basically putting himself down, like making himself, like he sees himself as worthless, as lesser in value, like that the girl in his dreams wouldn't want him. And it shocked me, honestly, because I was like, typically guys don't express that verbally to anyone.
Yeah. Or it seems like they don't care.
Right, yeah.
But they do. And he was even comparing himself to his friends, to the boys, to the girls.
Right.
He's talking about his teeth, his mouth, his everything,
poor
his
guy.
ears.
Yeah.
He stood there for a while, just looking at that mirror.
I'd rather be dead than have that bitch Sharon Riley see me like this. And she was right. Right to treat me like I didn't exist the other day at the pool in Live Oak Park. Because I was there with all my clothes on. And she was there with hardly any of hers. And she hated to show herself to me because I had nothing to show to her in return. I just felt so sad after I read that quote. I was like, wow.
Yeah, and it was just a simple thing as being in the pool. Yeah, that's a little bit too much, but
yeah,
we all go through it one way or another, different extremes. But but when he's out with Bennett and his buddy, Pete was another buddy. They were just jolly, careless. He even had an interesting relationship with his dad. Throughout the book, you get to see it. But his dad, I thought he was a cool dude. He just took care of business. He was straightforward.
Yeah.
And he actually cared about him. They worked on a car together.
And also, along with his younger friends, also Thomas had an unlikely older friend, and they call older, as in like wrinkly old. He calls him the general. That's why he's in town in the first place, because he's passed away. And he's come to attend his funeral. Mm-hmm. In the flashback, we're meeting the general for the first time. I love their relationship. I think that's so amazing that how much he appreciates the general in all of his stories, in all of what makes him him. I find that just so fascinating and so special that they have that bond.
Just from him, like, getting in trouble with the law, blowing things up and running away and lying a lot.
Yeah. But when he
has this unique relationship with the general. Him and his dad helped clean and, fix a lot of his guns that he's
Right.
collected throughout the years from different wars. Thomas gives that to the general, and in return, the general shares his stories. Like, I guess his lifetime of experiences. I've experienced that myself. I helped some guy out, and apparently he's a Navy vet, and he's sharing some stories with me. So I end up spending 30 minutes to an hour just hanging out when I was supposed to just drop off some furniture.
And he loved it. Being able, loved it.
Yeah. Hey, but as you mentioned, Thomas,
Yeah.
like, what you like about that relationship?
I don't know. I just love the information and like the value of what he gained from the conversations of this general's life stories, like everything that made him him. Thomas and his father, who he calls the colonel, they help the general
Refurbish, because a lot of them were really old Colts, old revolvers, Winchesters.
Right.
They rebuild them, they replace parts, clean them
Okay.
up, varnish some of the wood.
So so Thomas and the colonel just brought over to the general the latest gun that he cleaned up and what have you. And so he was telling the general, like, there's a part that's missing that I guess basically makes it inoperable, but, like, you could get, like, a replacement part if you wanted to. He says, "So why would I need for a gun to shoot?" He replied, smiling down softly at Thomas. "As long as it's got a story to tell." And I love that. And then also, further on, Thomas is like, at one point, the general stops talking, and he's like, maybe I need to put something in his hands to get him to keep talking or to start telling me another story. Because I feel like he literally has this relationship with him to hear all the stories.
Yeah.
Like, it genuinely fulfills him in so many ways. And I just love that. I love it. And I love that response. Like, he doesn't like the gun because it's a gun that can shoot and kill people or whatever. He likes the gun for the journey it went on.
Yeah, and this general, he's a vet. He's been around. He was like a combat medic, right?
No, he was an army doctor.
Army doctor. Yeah, I think one of the stories with one of the guns he has them everywhere around the house, like just scattered randomly. Yeah. Just like the random stories that he has.
Yeah.
So it went together hand in hand. And like one story I like, I guess he connected a gun to when the U.S. General Pershing crossed the border into Mexico in search of Pancho Villa, I think 1916, and then with how that, the year later, now they're involved in World War II. But he just threw it out there. Yeah, this gun I got from my friend when we were looking for Pancho Villa. I was like, what?
I'd be like, huh? Wow.
Who is this Pancho Villa? As a 16-year-old kid, you're like, whoa, you invaded Mexico?
Yeah.
Like, what happened?
Yeah, it's almost like the outside world has come to him in this small town in Texas.
Yeah, and they led the assault from Texas, so there's a lot of history with that. So just you could imagine, his imagination and thought. Yeah, so that was an interesting relationship.
Not only do we get some humorous moments between Thomas and his friends and the police, him bothering them terrorizing locals in fishing, the relationship he has with his father, the relationship he has with the general. We also get a bit of some mystery thriller action going on, because also during this time, which adds to the unforgettable summer, is that there are missing people and murders that are thrown in there. So, we get a lot of everything, to be honest, in this book.
A lot happens. Now you know why he's reminiscing about,
right. He's like, that year or that summer was, wow.
Yeah, his first car, his first this.
Everything.
Women, murders.
But that's life, isn't it?
Yeah, and his hand almost got blown up.
Oh my God.
So adding to the funny moments of the book, we go back to Bennett's house where Thomas is hanging out, after he almost blew things up and the cops were out looking for him.
Yeah.
And his friend covers for him, he's been at my house all morning. Mm-hmm. So apparently the sister is on the other line. So Bennett picks up the phone, and they lie that no one's picked it up. So he overhears a conversation that she's talking to one of her boy toys, he calls them.
No, they're gay friends.
That's what he says. It's probably just a dude, but he calls him his gay friend. Brothers, siblings. And he was about to hang up because Thomas was like, what are you doing? Do you even have anything to say? She's like, actually, I do have something to say. He stands up, puts the phone, on his posterior, his butt.
Wow.
And he lets out what?
Wow. His posterior.
Yeah, it's amazing. His butt. And I couldn't believe it myself. I know how you feel. And he lets out a big old fart. It gets quiet. The household gets quiet. And out of nowhere, the sister comes bursting out of the room. She slams the door. She's like,
oh my God.
Mom! Bennett's messing around.
Honestly, that part, I was like,
yeah.
That is something one of my brothers would have done. It was so relatable. This book is so relatable.
That was funny. And it also brought back memories because we were younger. There was only the one line.
I know, a landline.
Everyone was always on the phone when you wanted to use it. And sometimes unintentionally you picked it up, you overhear a conversation, and you end up, hearing some cheese mess or just like...
Some cheese mess.
Like, whoa, I can't believe my mom said that to Tia.
Oh my God, stop. Stop.
Yeah, so that was very relatable and funny. There's a lot of little moments like that with him and his buddies.
Thanks for hanging out with us, and be sure to check out The Green Apple Tree by Jean Fackler.